What's going on, guys? Platinum Cards in the house, and today I'm going to be coming to you with my Vampire deck. So before we get started, if you like what you see, don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's just get right into it. So first of all, with this deck, I like to run 3 copies of Vampire Ghost. Now, I think this card is super dope for this deck. This card works insane because essentially lets you add 1 to your hand, lets you dump 2 in the grave, and also lets you gives you an extra summon if you banish it, I believe, from the grave. I'm trying to read it properly. Moving forward, though, 3 copies of Vampire Retainer and 3 copies of Vampire Familiar. Now, both of these are really, really good for this deck. Both of them work in similar ways. One of them is, if it's special summon, you can pay 500 life points to add a Vampire Spell or Trap from your deck, and this one is you can pay 500 life points to add a Vampire Monster from your deck to your hand, which is super dope. And then on top of that, you can special summon them by sending a Vampire card from your hand or face up in the field to the graveyard. So these are usually the targets for Vampire Ghost. Dump them in the grave and then pop off other various combos. On top of that, it's just I have so many other ways to dump cards in the grave in this deck, and you can pop off a lot of different combos with them. Next are the 1-ups for the Vampire strategy. I like to use 1 copy of Vampire Fraulein, 1 copy of Shadow Vampire, 1 copy of Vampire Grace, 1 copy of Vampire Voivode, and 2 copies of Vampire Scarlet Scourge. Now, I've looked up a lot of different builds online. I do my research pretty thoroughly, I would say, before I post builds, and it seems to be the consensus is the ratios with this stuff seems to be similar. I've seen a couple decks with slightly different ones, but this is probably the best ratio just because I've seen so many people doing it, meaning it probably works best for them just as well as it works for me. Moving forward, though, I like to run 2 copies of Doom King Balderok. Of course, you're going to need this card. This card is crazy. You already know the amount of negate potential this has, plus all the shenanigans you can do with this. It's pretty crazy. Next, I like to run 3 copies of Unizombie. Unizombie is also another Foolish Burial type card where you can throw one from your hand and the deck into the grave, and it allows you to level manipulate, being able to get into a lot of different synchro monsters, actually. So, moving forward, I also like to run 2 copies of Necro World Banshee. Now, Necro World Banshee is a super dope card just as a searcher for Zombie World, but also as a slight protector. I honestly like to use it more as a searcher, but it does have that secondary effect there. I think this is probably best at 2. Maybe you can run it at 1 and try it out, but I think we do need a way to search Zombie World in this deck, so does work really well. And then lastly, 1 copy of Glow Up Bloom. I don't know why I said lastly, it's not lastly. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish it from your grave, add 1 level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck to your hand. That works great. Plus, on top of that, if you have Zombie World, you can just straight up special summon, which is insane. But it works with not only does it work with Doom King Balderok, but there's a lot of different zombie monsters in this deck that apply as well. So I think is a great card for this deck. Next, I like to run a copy of each of Mezuki and Gozuki. Gozuki is another card that just lets you dump in your grave, and then Mezuki is you can banish it from your grave in order to special summon a zombie, which is, I think, every single card in this deck. So yeah, so you can essentially bring back any of your monsters. Next, of course, for the hand traps, I like to run triple Ash Blossoms. Ash Blossoms, I think, probably work best in this deck. You could, however, replace this for any other hand trap that you best see fit, but personally, I'm going to go with Ash Blossoms. Moving on to the spell cards. So I like to run 2 copies of Vampire's Domain and 1 copy of Vampire's Desire. So Vampire's Domain allows you to pay 500 life points, and it gives you an extra summon, I believe. Yes, sir, it gives you an extra summon. I'm trying to read it now. And then if you're vampire monsters, I believe this card is, you can gain this effect each time your vampire monsters inflict battle damage to your opponent, gain the same amount of life points. So it does offset a little bit the effects of the vampire monsters, because some of them like pay 500 life points to activate this effect and whatnot. That does have potential to eat away at your life points. So this card, I think, is necessary just to offset that. Plus, it gives you an extra summon. Secondly, I'd like to run the Vampire's Desire. It works really, really well because it has multiple uses. 1, you can target a face-up monster you control, send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level than monster. If you do, the targeted level of the monster becomes the level of the sent monster. So it does work really well with level manipulation. And secondly is you can target a vampire monster in your graveyard, send a monster you control to the graveyard, special summon the targeted monster. So it also works as a bit of a Monster Reborn type situation. Moving forward though, I like to run 3 copies of Zombie World. So Zombie World is a must-have in this deck just because it turns everything to zombies. It negates Flunderies entirely. It's kind of crazy. Plus, it works really, really well with Doom King Balderok. And on top of that, we'll go forward and I'll show you a couple other combos or a couple of the cards that work really, really well. Next, I like to run 1 copy of Foolish Burial. That's self-explanatory. Sending a monster from your deck to the graveyard is going to set off a lot of combos for this deck. So I know there's a lot of cards that do that. They send a lot of cards, or a lot of cards that send a monster from the deck to the graveyard. But you can never have too many, in my opinion. So that's why I run that. But next, 1 copy of 1 for 1. This is to summon your copy of... You can also go with Glow Up Bloom, but mostly I use it for, if I can dig it out here, right here, Vampire Familiar. So this is also a level 1. If you can take advantage of its effect, you can link it off. You can summon this, and then you can link it off, and then you can use this effect again in order to summon it again, pop off more combos. Works pretty well. Moving forward, Called by the Grave, of course, just the best answer to hand traps. I think any deck should be using this these days. And then lastly, for the spell cards, I like to run 1 copy of Super Polymerization. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're going to be using Zombie World, Super Poly is just a great way to just interrupt and get around a lot of your opponent's cards. And it's just a quick effect, so you can really mess with their day. Zombie World and Super Poly combo. Next are the 2 trap cards. So I like to run 2 copies of Rivalry of the Warlords. Of course, I use that because of Zombie World. Everything you have is a zombie, so each player can only control 1 type of monster. It doesn't really do you too dirty. However, your opponent, it can screw them over a lot. Especially because if Zombie World is on the field, everything they have becomes zombies, so I believe it makes it so they can't normal summon anything else, because unless they have zombies in their hands. But that's just how that works. So moving forward to the extra deck. So first of all, I like to run 2 copies of Vampire Sucker. Next, I like to run 1 copy of Vampire Fascinator. I also like to run 1 copies each of Linkuriboh and Kriston Helki Fibrax, since you are running a decent amount of tuners, I would say. So moving forward, after the Link monsters, I like to run... for the Xyz monsters, I like to run 1 copy of Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, 1 copy of the Zombie Vampire, 1 copy of Crimson Knight Vampire Bram, 1 copy of Dampier Vampire Sheridan, and 1 copy of number 24. All right, and I only run 1 fusion monster. That's just for the Super Poly. If you really want to, you probably could run more Super Polys and just run more of these, or just more of any of the dragon fusions, like Predaplant. I think it's Starving Venom fusion. Those that archetype. I think a lot of those are generic. They use a lot of, I think it's like they just take 2 dark monsters and whatnot, so they work pretty well, and it's pretty generic. However, this card is just really, really good, and I really like it, so that's why I'm running this one specifically. For the synchros, Formula Synchron for sure, just because you're running Hulk. I'm running Red Eyes Zombie Dragonlord, 1 copy of Shiranui Sun Saga, and 1 copy of Skeletal Dragon Felgrand. So, these, however, I would say, in my opinion, I've been able to make level 8 synchros the easiest. So, and level 10 does come up once in a while. However, my intention with this is when I run it online, this is usually a Borreload Savage. This is a Psychic End Punisher, and this would be Baron de Fleur. So if you have the money for that, that's for sure what I would switch these 3 out for. However, there's just so many different things you can do with so many different cards that honestly I leave a little bit open to interpretation, you know. But anyways, guys, this is PlotterMcCard signing out for the day. If you like what you saw, don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, suggestions for improvement of this deck are always welcome. I'd love to hear them in the comments below. But oh my goodness, look at the time.
It's time to